Okay, Eamon, I'd just like to ask you the impact on business life you think could be the effect of Casement Park as it occurs to what's happening.
Yeah, well, basically we have to be cognizant of the fact that the corporate GA and the stadiums are set up as businesses. They are there to soak as much business and profit and money as they can out of the community. For instance, Croke Park has started off with 11 bars. They now have 30 bars, and in fact every corporate box now can serve drink. So the whole purpose of that is to make as much money as they can. Indeed, in the case of Croke Park, as we understand it, the underbidder for the beverages franchise offered 5 million over a 5-year period and didn't get it. So what you can see happening there is that they're trying to get as much and soak as much of the beverages business that used to before maybe go to the local bars. Often when people went to a match, they'd say, Asher, we'll let the crowd drift away and we'll have a few drinks, so we'll go and have something to eat in the locality while the crowd dissipates. The GA now try to take all of that, the stadiums try to take that. And you have to remember as well that the stadium, even though the corporate GA are supposedly part of a voluntary amateur association, they are also part of the worldwide stadiums professional grouping, where these people meet maybe every 6 months or a year and clap each other on the back on the basis of what kind of money they can make and what profits they make. And the whole purpose here is to make as much money and to find out how you can make more money out of the community. So any business that the local community get will actually be incidental. And for instance, when we're often thinking of big matches and concerts, but actually where an awful lot of damage will be done to the local community in the city is actually the daily conventions, because as I understand it, in the case of Casement's Stadium, they're putting in an 800-seater restaurant.
That's correct.
So why would they be putting in an 800-seater restaurant supposedly for one big Ulster football final a year? Doesn't make sense. But I'll tell you why they're doing it. They're doing it because they're going to be looking for weddings, conventions every day. And this business is going to be taken off other people in other businesses in Belfast, like hotels or convention centres, that pay their taxes, pay their rates, etc. So they're going to suffer. So in the context of business, then seeing as this is going to be happening every day, I've been up in Casement, and I was involved with the Casement Social Club issue and helped the residents as well. And driving around there, you have one major artery, which is the Andersonstown Road.
Right.
And to the back, as I said earlier, you're blocked off by the main motorway. So what's going to happen that road? How wider can they make that road? Not very much wider. And in fact, what you're going to have there every day is buses and cars, etc., going up and down. Furthermore, and that's going to impact very much on and sort of gridlock in a way that particular artery, which is very important. On top of that then as well, if they put in a museum and do it on the grand scale that they're doing it in Dublin, you'll also have a situation where school kids will be coming in, older people. Now I know you have lots of black taxis up there, but people trying to use bus transport have a terrible difficulty in Dublin that live in the Croke Park area, because an awful lot of the time the old people get on the bus, they're old, they're fragile, they're fearful, and a load of kids come on and they're boisterous and jumping around and they're afraid they'll hit into them, So all of these little inconveniences happen and people never actually think of them. The other thing to be said about stadiums as well, because often people talk about job creation and that it creates wealth. It's well known, and we have it up on our website, the Irish Stadium Communities Association. Lots of studies have been done on stadiums. Stadiums do not create wealth. Effectively what they do is they're a place where people can go and spend money, right? And the major beneficiaries will generally be the people that are on the big salaries, the 6-figure salaries. So effectively stadiums, what they do, and the money that's spent to them is money that could have been spent somewhere else. So anybody going to an event, for instance, at a stadium won't be spending that money in the local bar or the local restaurant in his hometown or in the suburbs of Belfast. If they come to anything that's on there, it's somewhere else will suffer. So that's the impact basically on business. It's not a positive impact, other than, for instance, And again, it's a huge inconvenience to the local community if they bring people in from abroad for concerts. But again, the artists take away a load of the money. People travel to the stadium using petrol and diesel. So an awful lot of costs. When you actually net it all out, there's no great benefit. And while there might be some benefit in providing a couple of hundred jobs while it's being built, then multiply the number of houses by 30 or 40,000 that have gone down in value, and then work out whether it was a good idea to put a stadium there for the local community.
Well, you just mentioned the number of houses, and I think that the social life obviously is going to be affected, and I think you mentioned earlier on that was 27,000 of
Yes,
a registration done, or they've done some survey of 27,000 people,
Yeah.
which is a serious amount of houses.
That's correct. Because of all the trouble that has gone on in Dublin, because of the breaching of agreements by the corporate GAA, and also highlighted by the excesses of the 3 One Direction concerts and followed up by 5 Garth Brooks concerts, the Chief Executive Officer of the Labour Relations Commission has been drafted in to try and deal with the serious problem that has arisen between the Croke Park GAA and the local community. And by the way, this is what will probably unfortunately eventually have to happen with yourselves. But in any event, because he was being brought in, a survey was demanded that on the real impact area of Croke Park Stadium. And now all of a sudden, the real impact area wasn't just the 2,500 houses in or around the lockdown area. It was realised that it was 27,000 houses were actually affected. So a survey was sent out to deal with major issues that relate to traffic, litter, and then the imposition on people's lives, the right to move to and from their homes, the obstruction of people's movement. These were the 3 main areas that were to be dealt with in the survey. But the very fact that survey had to be done at all, and the very fact that it had to cover 27,000 houses, so that tells you the scale of the impact of a stadium on the local community. So effectively, your quality of life is absolutely destroyed. And I think Fintan Farley mentioned it earlier, gave examples of what go on. But none of us plan our lives for the whole weekend. Nobody lives with a planned, absolute, minute by minute idea of what's going to happen. I mean, what if your mother is visiting, shopping nearby, and she wants to drop in? Well, unfortunately, if there's a concert on, she might not get in. What if you decide that you want to drive out? I mean, how much of our lives is actually based on decisions we make within a half hour's notice or an hour's notice? These kind of spontaneous things that you do in your life, if you live in a stadium while an event is on, forget about it. You've got to live a planned life. You have to, and that's why people don't want to live in areas like that. That's why people, when they afford it, and because we always have inflation, so the value of houses often go up. Unfortunately, the value of houses where stadiums are located don't go up by as much as they would in other areas. But if they go up a little, what you will find happening is that people will sell them, and those houses then get turned into apartments or flats. And that going back to the business issue, you get in then sort of transient type of people that haven't a stake in the community, And what happens then is the local shops and the butchers and everybody that were selling to a lot of families now find that you have a much more migrant population living there. And I've been up around the Casement Park area, and in the year or so that I've been up around there, I've seen the amount of for sale signs. I don't need to tell the people up there because they've noticed it themselves, but the amount of sale signs that have gone up and people leaving. For instance, I even heard a member of the Casement Social Club mentioning to me that in relation to a fine apartment complex that was across from the stadium in Andersonstown Road, that a lot of people have started to sell out. And this is just the start of the degradation of the community, and it's happening from a business point of view because the GA will soak everything out of it, or the corporate GA, and it'll happen because the well-off people will leave. So that's a good example of the different things that happen from business. And even like you can see it here, there was a big row in Dublin. The RDS, which was one of the oldest bodies and scientific bodies, and had a fine convention centre, it lost business from the state because the Gaelic Athletic Association, and certainly the corporate GA, they have a marketing arm they'll take every piece of business that they can get and use every piece of influence to take that business from others. That's the way they operate, and they will use their political context, even though the GA is supposed to be non-party political. They will use every context they have to get business. It's human nature to do it, and it happens. But at the end of the day, that stadium, if it goes up and it's too big, it won't be of benefit to the people. And I've said it before as well, everybody wants a nice stadium. Everybody wants their children to be able to play in stadiums. But how much are you going to have to pay when you go into that stadium? I mean, to go to an All-Ireland, I mean, I remember when you could have got to an All-Ireland for less than a fiver. Now you won't get to a big GA game for less than 80 or 90 quid. So anybody that thinks that when the stadium goes up that they'll get in cheaply to a concert or to an event, they will pay dear. And any family that will have to travel to Belfast, they might as well consider outlaying 200 to 300 quid to go to any major event that will be there if they're going as a family. It's it's almost to build a huge stadium because of the cost of it and the cost of running it. It's almost like turkeys voting for Christmas, because as a GA person, if I want to watch a match, all I want is a nice position in a stadium where I can sit down and my whole attention is focused on the match. I don't need a £100 million stadium around me to enjoy a match. So let the other businesses that the Casement Stadium is trying to take from people, let other businesses have that business. And furthermore, we believe, as the Irish Stadium Communities Association, that 20 million would have done a good job in that stadium. And why not give the other clubs that badly need money in the six counties or Belfast that 43 million that could be saved? I mean, they were able to redesignate all of the money when it was for the stadium in the Maze or Long-Kesh. They were able to redesignate it and divide it. So why can't they divide the money for the GA into money for the local clubs who badly need it and who use it 365 days a year, versus building a big stadium unnecessarily that's not needed for the GA and could be done with 20 million, and when you might only go there once or twice a year. So, to me, there's not a lot of good rationale, either from a business point of view or from a social point of view, for building a monstrosity like they're proposing.
Well, the other aspect that you've touched on is that the Croke Park Stadium in itself, which maybe has a bigger capacity than the Casement Park, it has got two arterial routes either side, and the road in between.
That's correct. Croke Park
may be affected, but Casement has only got one arterial route and built on that arterial route, which you mentioned. So perhaps maybe that would have a far more detrimental effect, even more than what Croke Park
it'll have. Yes, you're very correct. It's like an issue of the sum of the parts, as they often say, is less than the whole. Casement Park has only one arterial route, and you're going to have immense problems there, and that's probably why the PSNI got very concerned, and their assessment, I believe, was that the stadium couldn't be emptied except in 47 minutes. When you consider we have to say as well that Belfast is a volatile history. What about if threats and things like that happen? I mean, this could create havoc where you have only one arterial route and people flowing onto it. So safety and health and safety is going to be a huge issue. I'm astonished that planning was given against the background of the PSNI coming out and saying that it will take 47 minutes to empty the stadium. I mean, whatever happens, we have to protect people's rights and their lives, etc. And we've seen in issues before, even within stadiums, where if there are too many people inside of the stadium and there's any kind of a threat and there's a stampede, an awful lot of people can die. And as you mentioned there, Croke Park, on the other hand, has two major arteries. The Clonleaf Road down one side, and you have the North Circular Road down the other. And still, it's a major problem. It's still blocked up, and the issue of the number of people that can get into stadium is also a serious issue, because it's not only the 38,000, but for a concert they can put people standing, and they'll use up the pitch and standing in the pitch, so it's a bigger number. So when you look at the maths and you compare Casement to Dublin, you're actually going to find out that Casement will be in a much worse situation in terms of emptying out the stadium than even Croke Park is. So that is a major issue, and it's going to have to be dealt with. And I would say, when the judicial review, and you're very fortunate that you're getting a judicial review, and fair play to you for getting it, because that will be a great area for you to actually independently iron out the problems. And no matter what happens, one can hope that the court system will be totally independent. It's not political, and that you will get a fair shot at examining all the serious issues that arise in relation to the stadium. And in fact, as a duty of care, your committee needs to pursue the judicial review, and I'm sure the judge realised how important the judicial review was for the people that he allowed it to go ahead. And again, remember, it's the only, whatever decision is made there, at least will be a legal binding decision, and not like a lot of the decisions and agreements we've had in Dublin that the GA would just ignore and break.
Okay, there's just one final point which I'd like to put to you, and it's a case that has happened recently with the Sky deal, the GA.
Oh yeah.
Now, how would you think, from my viewing, that would actually have a serious impact on the amount of people that's going to be going to matches? So the attendance figures will be greatly reduced. So ask the question, why the need for such a big stadium then, if there's going to be GA games on the TV and people are going to sit at home? Surely it's got to be looking for concerts only where they're going to get the big crowds for the concerts. So there's something not quite correct with what they're putting forward these plans for, if it's not for sport.
Yeah. Well, I think the Moore and Owen did a submission to the planning, and they really assessed the numbers that were going to matches in Ulster, and they also assessed the impact of television on the numbers that were attending matches. And you're very correct in stating that it's downwards the figures are going, not upwards. So it's very clear to us that the main purpose of this stadium, as we see it, has to be for concerts, because the match figures don't validate it. And as you said, the recent Sky deal that the GA did will further erode the number of people that attend matches. And in fact, it also lends to the very unsavoury thing about the GA that I've mentioned earlier, about the corporate GA. They did this is a money deal for them. They make big television deals again for money, because it's Sky Sports. You have to pay big bucks to be able to watch Sky Sports. And in fact, for instance, when the RTE match was on, showing recently a hurling match, they said about 400,000 people watched it on television. When Sky 3 put on the Offaly Kilkenny match, they said that the viewing was only 30,000. Now, obviously, that's a lot of supporters if it's Kilkenny and Offaly supporters not watching it. But you see, what it does show is that an awful lot of people are not seeing the matches now on television. The old people that couldn't go to a match because it's on Sky. And I think it's an absolute disgrace that the GA would seek, the corporate GA would seek to make as much money as they could and put it on a service that is not free. I mean, people in Ireland have to pay, and pay big money to get Sky Sports. And furthermore, what will happen is that in paying to get that, they're going to be exposed to other sports. So if they're talking about protecting the culture and protecting the GA games, actually what they're forcing people to do is to get Sky Sports to watch their own county playing, but they'll see a lot more of Manchester United and Liverpool and rugby and all of these competing games on it. So it could very well backfire on them, and it has backfired in terms of here in the south of Ireland. People are angry that the GA would do this to our people, that they would force people to maybe have to go to bars with young people to watch a game. And other than just, as you said, the fact that matches, that it will take away from people attending matches, it is also causing other damage, and just shows you the greed of the association, shows you the way the corporate GA are going. And it's very sad, as a dyed-in-the-wool GA man myself, I think it's very sad that the GA is going that way.
Okay, thank you, Eamon. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.